I graduated high school in 1977. I'm probably one of those persons who knew in high school the career path I wanted to take. I went to high school in Coffee County in Manchester, Tennessee, and as a senior in high school, I traveled by Greyhound bus to Atlanta, Georgia, and took an FCC, Federal Communications Commission examination to work at the radio station in Manchester. At the time, if you were going to be a board operator with the transmitter, you had to be licensed by the FCC. So I took the bus to Atlanta, much to my mother's worry, I think. I took the test, rode the bus back, and as soon as I got back to Manchester, I took the license that I'd received from the FCC to the general manager of the radio station there in my hometown and said, I proudly have my license, can I have a job? And I think he appreciated the initiative and hired me then as a part-timer at WMSR, where you did everything from playing records to turning the transmitter on to reading the news to a variety of things. And that's kind of where I got my start. I think taking the initiative with ultimately my parents' support as a high school kid, riding a Greyhound bus to Atlanta, spending the night in an Atlanta hotel by myself, taking the FCC exam the next day and riding a bus back was indicative of the persistence that's needed in a broadcast career. That persistence, not taking no for an answer, has been instilled in me for the past 30 some odd years of my career, not only in broadcasting but also here with the police department. You know, in your heart and in your soul you kind of know what's right, what needs to be done. Sometimes insisting doesn't do it by itself. It's the persistence that goes along with the insisting that has greatly aided me in my career. I graduated high school in 1977 and went to MTSU. MTSU had a radio station, a 50,000 watt FM station, WMOT. The program director at the time was very happy to have a guy coming in who had some radio experience that I'd received at my hometown station. I knew how to operate a board, I knew how to cue up a record, and I could sign the station on in the mornings, which meant the program director, the full-time staffer, maybe didn't have to get up so early some days of the week, that he could rely on a student to do that. So I started doing that at WMOT as a freshman in college. Would get up on several mornings a week, sign the station on at 6 a.m., rip the news, read the news, play music for a couple of hours until my first class at 8 o'clock. I was relieved on the board at 7:45 to 7:50 on the mornings I was there, and I would go on to my 8 o'clock class and someone else would, another student would come on the air. I transitioned from that into a news field at the radio station. Back then, students did a newscast every day. It was a 30-minute newscast in the afternoons. We would go cover city council meetings in Murfreesboro, other government meetings, public events. So there was news gathering on the part of the students that was not just a practice type thing. The news gathering actually was being aired on a 50,000 watt FM station in Murfreesboro that clearly had its reaches to Nashville. The signal clearly reached into Nashville and other parts of Middle Tennessee. I was very fortunate at MTSU to have a lot of friends who had the same drive and ambition that I had to get into the broadcast industry. Several of those persons have done very well in their own respects. Some are still at broadcast stations around the country. One of those persons was Steve Schuler. Steve is now the public affairs director for the Shelby County Mayor's office in Memphis. But as we were juniors going into senior year in college, Steve had gotten a job as an intern at Channel 4, WSM-TV, working in the newsroom. At the time, student interns were paid by Channel 4. And Steve came to me one day as part of our very close friendship and said that he had heard that WSM Radio may be hiring a similar student intern to assist with their news operation. At the time, WSM Radio News was the largest news operation, radio news operation in the state. There were field reporters, anchors. There was even a 1-hour newscast. It was called All That's News, that aired from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. every night of the week, Monday through Friday. So Steve suggested to me that WSM Radio was looking for perhaps a student intern. I drove to Nashville, I filled out an application, and I began talking to Al Vex, who at the time was the news director at WSM Radio. Al had transitioned to radio from television. He was a former anchor on Channel 4 prior to going on to WSM Radio. Part of that persistence that I mentioned earlier. I would call Al quite often, asking him whether that student intern position was open. Is he moving forward? What's the status? I was very interested. I wanted to get my foot in the door. And at the time, WSM Radio for me was the place to do it. I mean, I had grown up listening to WSM Radio. I knew of its pristine news reputation. It was the place to be, I thought, for me. In the summer prior to my senior year in college, so it would have been, I guess, the summer of 1980, shortly before the fall semester began in 1980, I remember getting a phone call at my home in Manchester from Al Vex. And if my jaw could have actually hit the floor, it would have hit the floor when the phone rang and Al Vex was on the phone. And he said, "Do you still want to work here? Do you still want this internship job?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." So as a result, my job at WSM was to write the national news for the hour-long newscast. And I would work from 12:30 to 5:30 every day, writing the national news. Al Vex was the anchor of that hour-long newscast, Monday through Friday, All That's News. That evolved. I got my first break on the air. My first appearance on the air for WSM Radio came on a holiday. I was asked by Al to come in and just mind the newsroom on this holiday. There were football games and other events that had preempted the newscasts, or so we thought. Charlie Chase was the afternoon personality on WSM AM, and I remember Charlie calling the newsroom and saying, at 2:30 today we've got a news break. The ball game doesn't start until 2:45, so at 2:30 someone's got to do a newscast. So I remember thinking, uh-oh, because I'm the student intern, I'm not the on-air type. I wasn't hired for that. So I called Al Vex at home and said, Charlie says we have a newscast at 2:30. What should we do? What do you want to do? And Al asked me, "Do you think you can do it?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You're the man, go." So that was my first time bantering with Charlie Chase and then doing the newscast after our on-the-air banter. Al Vex would ultimately leave WSM in the coming months. There was a transition in leadership in the newsroom. Mike Donegan was the news director. You will know Mike Donegan as the public address announcer at Titans games. Mike has been the PA announcer at Titans games since the opening of LP Field. But as I left MTSU in 1981, Mike asked whether I wanted to come on full-time, and I was hired as a full-time reporter, street reporter at WSM Radio upon leaving MTSU in 1981. While working as a street reporter at WSM Radio, I was intricately familiar with the goings-on of Metro government. Our office was actually in the Metro Courthouse. The WSM radio reporters actually had an office in the Metro Courthouse, so we were here as arrests were being made and that type of thing. We kind of had a news partnership with Channel 4, although at the time the radio and TV stations were splitting. The TV station had been sold off by WSM to gain capital to begin the Nashville network. So while the radio station and TV stations were splitting from each other, the news operation still kept a loose relationship, a loose partnership, if you will. Alan Griggs was the assistant news director at Channel 4, as I was a street reporter at WSM Radio. So we had a very close personal relationship during that time. If I had an event going on, if there was breaking news here, I would call Alan, and likewise, if Channel 4 had something breaking that I didn't have, I could go to Channel 4 and get some sound for that to put on the radio. So the relationship between Alan Griggs and myself became stronger and stronger. Ultimately, Alan asked if I wanted to come to Channel 4 and try television on weekends. So I began, while still working at WSM Radio, doing Channel 4 on weekends. And ultimately that evolved to 1987, when Alan asked if I would come to Channel 4 full-time as a reporter in 1987. And I did that, and I have absolutely no regrets. That was a great time for me. I made many, many friends and acquaintances, relationships that I still have today. That was my career for 5 years, 1987 to 1992. As part of my mission at Channel 4, I covered the police department and law enforcement here in the city. And I became acquainted with then Chief Robert Kirshner of the Nashville Police Department. And at the time, his deputy chief, John Ross. In 1991, they began talking with me about the possibility of transitioning from Channel 4 to the Nashville Police Department as its first ever public affairs person. We talked loosely over a period of months. Those talks were kind of stalled in late 1991 when Chief Ross died. Chief Ross died suddenly and unexpectedly in 1991. Chief Kirshner and I then in the first quarter of 1992 began talking again, and ultimately I left Channel 4 for the Nashville Police Department on May 16th of 1992. That was my start day here at the police department, May 16th, 1992. Oh, okay. And I'm now in my 21st year here. When I first came from Channel 4 to the police department in May of 1992, there was a bit of a challenge in gaining the trust of the persons here in the police department. They had never had a person like me in this building, a public affairs person who was a part of the chief's office, and the investigators, detectives, officers on crime scenes were a bit apprehensive in those early days when I would show up. And it took some time for me to build trust and credibility with them. But relationship building does take a little bit of time. Ultimately, we were together successful in putting information out, word out about certain things going on in the city. And I would like to think that the trust and the partnership between my office and the detectives and the officers in the field grew stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where we are today. One of the things that I instill at our training academy when I teach the new recruits is the formula of image and credibility going hand in hand. What I tell the recruits and what I tell our police officers at the same time is that the image that they project day in and day out, on duty and off duty, is perceived by the public to form an opinion of that person's and this agency's credibility. Our image and our credibility are collectively the most important asset that we have. Image and credibility of this law enforcement agency are very, very important. And I would like to think that over the years that you have seen our image and credibility be quite strong. Our relationships with the Nashville community is very, very strong. One only need look at what goes on in other parts of the country, other major cities. Some of these law enforcement agencies in other major cities are in crisis based on the actions of just a few officers has put the entire agency in crisis. We have not had that here, and I would like to think that it's because of the caliber of people that we hire and the fact that these people are cognizant of image and credibility as they carry on their professional and personal lives. Now, that's not to say that we don't have people who trip up from time to time. We certainly do. And when that happens, it's incumbent upon the police department to deal with those issues publicly, forthrightly, and expediently. If a police officer is arrested for DUI or for domestic violence, the police department is informing the community of that arrest. We're not hiding it. We're not letting, it's not that somebody from the media has to come ferret that out. We want the public to know that we got a problem here, we're dealing with it. Most Nashvillians would be surprised to know that in this police department we have approximately 1,900 employees. That's a lot of people. Certainly you can't monitor 1,900 employees day in, day out, off duty, on duty. There's a great deal of trust that is instilled in these people. We have a tremendous number of great police officers amongst those 1,900. Nearly 1,300 of the 1,900 people are police officers. The remainder, civilian professional support staff, school crossing guards, make up the other police officer trainees are part of that 1,900 figure. This police department can't function without the trust and faith of the Nashville community. During 2012, calendar year 2012, our police officers attended 1,880 community meetings. We sponsor well over 500 neighborhood watch groups, business groups, etc. in the city. We liaison with them on a regular basis. That's the highest number that we've ever had. 1,880 meetings in a year. That's an average of about 5 meetings a day, every single day of the year. The community, to have faith in this police department, must know that we are professional, that we are transparent, that we're credible. The credibility perception comes from the image that I project when I'm talking about a case on television, that our officers project while on crime scenes, that Chief Anderson projects when he's making announcements of major arrests. Our image and credibility go hand in hand, and that credibility is an essential component of fostering and maintaining the trust and support of the community. And I would suggest to you that the trust and support of this community in this police department is very strong. In 10 years from now, I'll be 63 years old. So I'll reserve a decision on where I'm going to be 10 years from now till we get closer to that time. What I think you will see in the coming years for this police department is a continued emphasis on hiring the best and the brightest people possible to be Nashville police officers. There is an intense screening process that goes into hiring these individuals. There's testing, there's background investigations, there is a 5.5-month academy session, and certainly not everyone who enters the academy graduates 5.5 months later. The dropout percentage is slightly higher than 20%. Certainly it's a very physical job, and the physical nature of the training causes some persons to drop out, and then others realize that police work just isn't for them. But I think you will see a continued emphasis over the years on hiring the best and the brightest people to be Nashville police officers, people who we think can carry on that image of a credible police officer who is kind to the public, who is working to protect Nashville's families, Nashville's visitors, and is committed and dedicated for the long term to this community. Again, the Nashville Police Department doesn't buy advertising. The image that persons get of our department come from personal interaction and what they see from news coverage. Both of those need to be high. The image projection needs to be high so it translates into high credibility in the community.